Hi, welcome along to Outdoor Gear Chat. We are here to talk episode 30, which is kit lists for 8,000 meter peaks, which, as I often said, blows my mind. We're joined as always by Cathy. Hi.
Hi Wayne, I'm Cathy and I'm the co-owner and director of the Climber Shop in Ambleside and the Joe Brown shops in Snowdonia. And you're right, this is a pretty niche subject all in, really. There's not a huge number of people, relatively speaking, to the population that happily march up 8,000 metre peaks. But we are joined today with a very special guest who likes nothing better than to wander up into the heady atmospheres of the planet. Jon Gupta is a RAB athlete and began his adventure career spending 2 months in a remote corner of Belize. He's also completed the brutal, and actually that's probably underlined actually, Yukon Arctic Ultra 430-mile race. Jon has also organised, climbed, guided and summited mountains on over 100 major expeditions all over the world, including, and probably not limited to, 14 ascents and 6 ski descents of Mount Elbrus, 3 ascents of Aconcagua, 13 ascents of Amadablam, 2 of Island Peak, 2 of Labuche, 2 of Mira Peak, a successful and rare winter ascent of Denali, climbing 3 7,000-meter peaks in 28 days in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, including the first ski descent of Peak Lenin, and guided 8,000-meter peaks no less than 12 times, including K2, Manaslu, Dhaulagiri, Kanchenjunga, Makalu twice, Lhotse twice, and Everest once from the north and 3 times from the south. Jon has also organised and guided the current record holder of the 7 summits Guinness World Record, Steve Plain from Australia. Now, he's also on a tight time budget because he's about to leave for Kilimanjaro for the 37th time. And I know you're itching to get out there, Jon. We're very grateful you could just share a moment of your time with us. And you can stop cringing now. I've read off your list. And I think it leads me into my first question. You are first and foremost an outdoor professional, as well as being absolutely passionate and an advocate of the outdoor environment. Most guys, or most professional guys, would have a wardrobe full of suits to go to work in the office. Are all yours down by any chance?
Well, firstly, thanks very much for having me along. It's a pleasure to chat to you guys. Do I have a wardrobe full of down? I do, actually, yeah.
I thought you might.
It's quite remarkable, like when a friend pops around my house or someone and they kind of see the ridiculous amount of sort of equipment and down products, as you said, that I have. It's quite interesting. But yeah, I do. I had to think about this. I have 2 suits. The conventional suits, like a summer suit for weddings, and I actually have a DJ which doesn't get used very much. But yes, I have 2 full down suits, and I also have 2 two-piece down suits. So I have basically 4 down suits, and then of course all the other sort of down layers for varying other temperatures and mountains that go with that. So yes, and I also have about 3 pairs of trainers in total. And probably, well, I don't know, 15 pairs of varying sizes of boots of different stiffness and different warmth. So yeah, I'm definitely at one end of the scale here with outdoor equipment versus everyday clothing and equipment.
Fantastic.
I love that. All your mates pop around and say, right, can we see your kit, Jon?
Let's
have a look at your kit stuff.
Well, I'm very fortunate to have a small house up in North Wales where I live, and it doesn't have a garage. So I actually had to rent a container space, which I've had for a few years now, and that's like a walk-in shop. Basically, it's like tents, sleeping bags, backpacks, ropes. You know, it's actually quite fun. I quite enjoy going down there and like tinkering with it and organising it, but it's a bit silly sometimes. Yeah,
I kind of get the feeling it's probably very well organised as well.
Yeah,
yes, I thought so.
I mean, it's not ridiculous, but I might get onto this a bit later when we talk about when we're actually on expedition and sort of living in tents and stuff. And it's just a matter of making your life easier if things are organized. I definitely don't have OCD, but just being organized to the right amount just makes your life so much easier.
Yeah, and that knowing where everything is at a particular time, it saves you
Exactly.
so much time and energy and so on, doesn't it? Yeah. Can I,
100%.
as a non-climber, I think I've said this before, is I'm intrigued with your story and how you end up on a jungle trek to Belize and now like doing 8,000 meter peaks. What was the leap? Were you always a climber, Jon?
No, not at all. I mean, it's a really good question, and one that comes up often, because I do have that sort of on my website, as that was the sort of starting point. So between school and university, I took a year out and I kind of worked full time for 6 months in John Lewis, which was great. And then I went sort of away traveling for 6 months. And the start of that travel was to join a company, an expedition company in Belize, a British company, but we went to Belize and we did this epic, really quite hardcore expedition into the jungle. And there was a point during this trip where I was sort of hanging out with the expedition leader, a guy called Chris Rhodes, and I was just sort of chit-chatting away and asking him. And then suddenly this light bulb went off and the penny dropped that he was getting paid to be there. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, this is cool. And then obviously my brain went into overload, and I asked him sort of how you get into it and, you know, what else he does with his time. And I learned about the mountain leader qualification, the ML, and sort of the varying paths that could take you into. So I came back, went to university, but by the time I'd finished uni, I had my ML complete, my SPA or RCI as it is now complete, and I was well on track to winter ML and MIA and that sort of thing. So to answer the second part of that question, I would definitely describe myself as a sort of mountaineer first and then sort of rock climber second. But actually that would have been true up till about now-ish, or the last 5 years, where I would say that's tipped probably, and I'm sort of equally a mountaineer and a rock climber now.
Yeah, and you've been doing more climbing over the last couple of years, I think.
Yeah,
reading on you. So yeah, you saw your website,
yeah,
and so that's brilliant. Thank you, and it's good to see that progression of, you know, what you went through in the training and so on. And particularly, I know a lot of our listeners are in that sort of category, really wanting to work in the outdoors as well. So sorry, but back to Cathy's questions now. And Kit. The important stuff. So you mentioned a bit about layers when you were talking about your down suits as well, and the various. So, you know, what sort of stuff might you be taking on expedition? So obviously you've got the real, you know, hardcore, heavy duty down suit stuff, but what other stuff would you pack in there as far as clothing's concerned?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's no sort of witchcraft and magic about it. It is just a sort of normal layering system. And it's, you know, what the sort of 3 or 4 layers that I might use would be the same if I were in the Alps or actually in Scotland. It might just be that I wear them more or slightly heavier items than they are. So it's always kind of the same. It's like a base layer and then some sort of fleece or soft shell kind of layer, and then often there might be a sort of a Primaloft layer or a lightweight down layer, and that kind of sees me through most things. And then if it sort of gets a bit gnarly and the winds pick up and that sort of thing, there might be a lightweight sort of shell, like Gore-Tex shell type thing, and then there's always a big down jacket in there. But I don't often find that I need more than those 5 to operate prior to wearing my down suit. So really that it all comes down to what I sort of preach, or not preach, I kind of say to my clients, is about having kit that, you know, like that. To me, that's the most important thing above what brand it is or what color it is. It's about knowing that exact piece of kit and the limitations of that piece of clothing, because you've worn it so much. You know that you look out the window and be like, yeah, I just need that jacket today, and it's got these zips here and this hood here and that toggle there, and that's kind of done subconsciously. And that for me is more important. Like if you turn up with like a hole in your fleece, I think great, because you'll know exactly what that fleece can do for you.
Yeah, it's been out there in all conditions. That's fascinating. That's a theme in a lot of our guests, actually, isn't it, Cathy? They're saying it doesn't matter where you are, and there's it's the same system that people use, and given the conditions, and it might be slightly different when it's going to be there's a lot of humidity in Scotland where there's a high chance of rain versus other places. But actually, it's still that same sort of core 4, 5, 6 pieces of kit that get taken.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and
Cathy.
essentially, I know each of these pieces of kit is a pretty major investment, and you can go along and think, oh, base layer, crikey, and especially merino, which is not a cheap piece of equipment to buy, and you're sort of holding it up thinking this is really light and super flimsy. Why does it cost so much money? But all that technology that's gone into that garment, the cut, the paneling, the patterning, the animal welfare in some situations as well, particularly with merino, has all been channeled into that product to work in the multitude of environments that Jon's just explained. So you're not essentially buying a base layer for going out walking in the Lake District or even going down just for a walk in your local woods. You are actually buying the expertise and the knowledge and the skill set that's involved in creating a garment that could work perfectly well in an 8,000 meter environment. So if you are out and about and using your equipment technically in all weathers, you don't have to buy different kit for each trip. You don't have to buy different kit each season. That kind of high street mentality to clothing just isn't there for technical clothing. It really is designed to be first and foremost technical and to work in a given environment.
No, yeah, well, I think I'm just thinking I've got a merino base layer on now, and I was thinking, well, actually, I probably bought it 15 years ago, and it cost me, it cost me 60 quid, something like that. And at the time, it was like, bloody hell, that's a lot of money. And I bought 3 or 4 of them, I think, at once, and they're still going strong now. There's a few holes in them, just as Jon, you were saying there. Actually, it's like there's a hole on my left arm. It just catches on my watch regularly, but it's still getting some good use. So then that made me think though about the stink factor. So that your merino's brilliant. I've worn this thing for days and it doesn't honk at all. But I guess, Jon, when you're out on like expedition, how do you keep stuff not stinky, or how does hygiene work with kit?
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, especially when you're sharing tents with other climbers and stuff. Yeah. You don't want to be the one sort of stinking really bad and trying to hide inside your sleeping bag. But to be honest, I think in cold environments, and other listeners and other folk who have spent time in cold environments, you don't tend to smell as much. Just I find that the bacteria and the amount of sweating you do doesn't seem to make you smell so much. And then if the classic is Kilimanjaro, kind of you can go up and you kind of like, oh yeah, I don't smell too bad, and you kind of go to the summit, and then you come back down, and as soon as it starts getting really warm and you're back in the jungle and it's suddenly 30 degrees and you're like, oh my goodness me.
What's that buzzing sound? Oh, it's me. Yeah.
But basically, a base layer for me is super important, because actually, even though we could be at 6,000 or 7,000, if the sun is up and it's strong at altitude, if the sun is up and there's no wind, the temperatures can get really warm. And even at 7,000, I often find myself just in a base layer. So it's really important for me. So I'm always going for long sleeve base layers with a hood. And if I can get them in a light color, that's fantastic. And of course, I'm looking for a pretty merino heavy blend of something, or merino layer. And I'm not too worried how warm this base layer is. I just need it to be very functional. So yeah, long sleeve with a hood, and ideally a lightish color. And you'll see me walking through the Western Coombe, or up through the mountains on these big peaks, just wearing that. But I'm covered. I've got a buff up to just blow my eyes, and there's no skin on show, sort of thing. So I often carry a small deodorant if I'm going up on the hill for 4 or 5 days, and then wet wipes are fantastic too. You get them in tiny little packets of 10. You can keep them in a little pocket so they're warm, they don't freeze, and they're fantastic for generally keeping yourself a bit cleaner and a bit fresher on a rotation.
I thought you were contemplating a revelation about it being a little canister of Lynx Africa that you took on the hill with you then.
My favorite thing about Christmas is all the memes that come out about Lynx Africa. But no, I wouldn't take anything that's pressurized for kind of obvious reasons, because it will probably just not work. And I wouldn't take one of those ones that has a little ball that spins around with fluid that comes
roll
out.
on.
Because they just freeze. Yeah.
In fact, it's this is
the stick.
like a little
the dove stick. Jon's delivered the choice.
Yeah.
So we
Brilliant.
get up close and personal.
Yeah.
No problem.
Just going back to what you were saying about base layers and the covering, the SPF factor, the sun protection factor, is really, really important to take into account as well, because if you've got a super thin base layer, that might not protect you. You could actually get burnt through that. But sunburn is bad, but sunburn that occurs when you're not realizing it and you're out all day thinking you're protected is the absolute worst. So it's always worth looking at the SPF as well.
Yeah, 100%. I often, I always challenge my clients at the beginning of a trip that their main objective is to try and finish the expedition looking like they haven't been on one, which is incredibly difficult. And it just means you really need to be on it with applying your sun cream, and sort of looking after yourself, because it's so easy to get sunburn very quickly in these high altitude environments.
In surprise places as well. I hadn't put cream up inside my nose.
Roof of your mouth, inside your
Oh,
nose. Yeah, it's weird.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not suggesting you put sun cream inside your mouth. That would be weird. But, the buffs and effectively covering up is really important.
That's a fascinating tip. And yeah, no, we spoke a while ago to Julbo, hadn't we, about the goggles and sort of eye protection, and that bounce back off the snow of UV rays. And yeah, that's fascinating. I know, Cathy, you told the nose story before, but that's really interesting about your mouth as well, and making sure everything's covered. Yeah,
at the end of an 8,000 meter trip, you might find yourself either back in Skardu in Pakistan or back in Kathmandu in Nepal. And if you're walking around the street, you can spot people a mile away that have done an 8,000 meter peak or a summit day at least, because they'll have a line of sunburn that runs across the top of their eyebrows, but from all the way across, which is a gap between their hat and their sunglasses or their goggles. And then they'll also have on their cheekbones sort of two triangles that run out across towards their ears, which is sort of the gap between a buff or their oxygen mask and their sunglasses.
And the goggles as well. Yeah.
For whatever reason, they haven't put enough sun cream on or been able to reapply because it's cold and it's 8,000 meters, you're wearing mitts and all the rest of it.
I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, making sure you're applying sun cream before you put all that stuff on, and just making sure the whole face is covered, and then putting goggles on. Does that work then?
Yeah, I mean, I've made a note when I was thinking about today's chat, and I basically summarized that high altitude, being successful or enjoying high altitude is kind of about two things. It's about all the little systems that you create that work for you, whether it's your layers or in your tent or your sort of eating and drinking. So all the little systems that you create that work for you, and also making anything that is difficult or going to happen in the future convenient and accessible, so that you're more likely to do them. So when I go out for a summit push, we might even leave at 10 o'clock at night, but I've fully sun creamed up, full well anticipating that I probably won't be able to or have the desire to or the be bothered attitude to reapply again. But I do in my pocket, as always, carry like a sort of factor 50 zinc kind of Pritt stick style thing, and I have a big one which is not like the little lipstick thing, but like slightly bigger, like a Pritt stick, which is factor 50. I can do that with my mitts on, and I almost always can get that out and apply it to these places that are exposed on my face.
Right, that's a really good tip. Yeah. And then I guess some of that is as you said before, with kit layout, organization, and so on. That's how you manage that, isn't it? So just you've mentioned tents a few times now, and eating as well. Just have is there particular, because literally know nothing about this particular tents that you will take on the expeditions, or is it a matter of you hiring stuff in country? Is that
it's a bit of both, depending on where we're going, but. Hands down, my favorite tent is the Mountain Hardware Trangos. They're just a fortress, and when you're up in these places, they can switch between being quite benign and look at the view, isn't that lovely, to being pretty serious if the weather comes in and big winds and storms. And there's nothing more scary than being in a slightly flimsy tent in 100-kilometer winds, on the side of a very, very big mountain. And being in a well-pitched Trango 3 gives me a lot of confidence. And that so far they've never failed me. And they do have it's superbly made and designed. The space is just fantastic. It's got brilliant pockets everywhere. So it's really easy for me to organize everything, a really good porch, and it's just bulletproof. It's a great bit of kit.
Yeah, and then sleeping bags and so on. How do sleeping arrangements work? What do you tend to take with you?
Well, as I gracefully drift through life and get slightly older,
you want more comfort, is what you say. Yeah, you want.
Well, I just appreciate. I've always appreciated how important sleep is, not least just for recovery, and recovering. If you can recover on the mountain as you go, then that's obviously fantastic. So anything that sort of aids having a better sleep, I'm all in for. So I've kind of thrown away the sort of uber light, ultra light, and fast kind of concept, especially if I'm working. And now I go for a pretty meaty sort of inflatable mattress. And my new sort of favorite thing is a very lightweight, but probably slightly over luxurious pillow. So it's only 57 grams. So, you know, I can argue the weight on this one, but it's a bit of a game changer. So yeah, really, really good inflatable mattress. And I tend to take the Thermarest Z-Lite as well, you know, the foam Z-Lite. So that's on the bottom, big inflatable mattress, little inflatable pillow. And then, yeah, sleeping bag, it kind of depends what the trip is, but equally you sleep better if you're sort of warm and comfortable. But you have to find a balance somewhere. For the big trips, I'm on a sort of -22 comfort. So it weighs about 1.8 kilos, 2 kilos, something like that. High quality, so lightweight materials. So you do have to be a bit careful with it, but yeah, high quality and super warm.
Do you carry a bivy bag to boost that if need be?
No, I've never really got into this bivy bag thing. Some people love them. I've never really got into it so much. I did use it on the Yukon Arctic Ultra, but that was because we weren't using a tent and we were sleeping outside. But even if I'm in the Alps bivvying, unless I'm expecting rain, maybe, then personally, it's another 400 grams or something that I've never felt like I needed.
Yeah.
Well, you'd rather have invested elsewhere, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never felt like I really needed it, so I've just never taken it, and so far it's been okay. Yeah.
But great insight into how you sort your sleeping mattress situation. I guess you sleep layering, isn't it? Like you say, you've got the Thermalite, then a mattress, then you've got your pillow and your sleeping bag as well. And do you use silk liners or anything like that, or is it just straight in the sleeping bag now?
No, I mean that just seems like unnecessary faff. You know, there's a lot going on in a tent anyway. Put yourself at high altitude, and you've got loads of kit, and you're melting snow 24/7, and it's just, there's a lot going on, so you need to be organized. And I've never found that a silk liner is of any benefit to me whatsoever. It just, yeah, I mean, if you're camping and you're camping in your car, or you like the feeling of silk against your skin, then please feel free, be my guest. I mean, these are just my personal things. You know, if a client turns up and says, "John, this is non-negotiable, I have to have my silk liner," I'll be like, I just don't care.
Crack on. Yeah. Whatever works.
Yeah. Whatever keeps you happy, I don't mind.
But coming back to the mats and the sleeping bag, both, or all three, with 2 mats and the sleeping bag, all three working in conjunction are really important to that great night's sleep. You can have the most amazing sleeping bag in the world, but if you're sleeping on a wafer thin piece or sleeping mat that has got really little to no insulation, you're not going to have a comfortable night. And vice versa, you can have a lovely, great big thick sleeping mat, but if your sleeping bag's too thin, that's not going to keep that lovely warm heat over the top of your body. It's just going to let it all dissipate. So using them all in conjunction, and actually perhaps when you're working with your systems, or thinking about buying your systems, thinking about them all as one unit and keeping you warm at night, is a really good thing, just to have in the back of your mind and to help make the right decision.
I've got a quick story for you.
Here we go. Yeah.
When I was involved with the Seven Summits record with Steve Plain that you mentioned in the intro, we were on Denali in Alaska in winter, and it probably is and may always be one of the best trips I'll ever do. It was just epic. But I remember on like day 3, I sort of threw in my knife across the tent, and it was all it was one of those Petzl knives, but it was all tucked away. But for whatever reason, it landed on my thermarest.
Oh, no.
Put like an inch long slit in it, and all the air went out. So I was like, that's okay. I've got a small repair kit. So, flattened it down, cleaned it off, sort of warmed up the glue, did all the things, and it just refused to kind of bond properly. So after a few efforts, I just ditched it, and we cached it with some other things and picked it up on the way down. So that meant for the next 18 days, in temperatures down to like minus 40 and colder, I slept on just my down suit and his down suit kind of flat on the bottom of the tent, and that was it, because we were pulling everything on pulks and on our bag. We'd really stripped down, like every gram was being accounted for. So I didn't have my Z Light, my foam Z Light. I just decided to take the insulated air mattress. It was quite a few uncomfortable and not particularly warm nights on the side of Denali in winter, and just lying on top of two down suits. It was not my favourite.
And you never throw anything across the tent ever again.
No, I delicately pass it everywhere now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Delicately placing things now.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kathy, I interrupted you then.
I do have a question about the Seven Summits trip in particular. You obviously guided Steve Plain, who did a fantastic achievement, broke the record by 9 days, I think it was, wasn't it? And you had the unenviable job of doing all of the logistics and everything involved in getting him to the summit. Does that make you the second fastest person to have done all 7 summits?
It's a good question. No, it doesn't, because I did 6 of them. Steve and I had a long chat about this, and there was 2 factors at play here. One is that to go down to Antarctica is an expensive endeavour. And the way that Antarctica and Mount Vinson is sort of operated meant that there was no sort of cheap way for me to get in to guide him. So it seemed like an awful lot of money for me to go, when actually the guides and the companies that work down there are exemplary and they're amazing. So in short, he didn't really need me for that one. And the other one, on a sort of more humanistic factor, was that after a discussion with a few friends, I decided that if I removed myself entirely from the record, I would hope that the chances of me making decisions, on the mountain that I didn't want to make would be removed. So I always knew that Denali was going to be the crux of this whole project because of doing it in winter and it's hard. And there were moments on there where I had to make really difficult decisions. And whilst I'd like to think it wouldn't make a difference, I'm only human, and it probably would if there was a record there, like a Guinness World Record for me as well. I might have pushed it more, and that really shouldn't be the case when you're working in these extreme environments. So I removed that factor completely, and it meant that every decision I made was based purely on making the right decision at the right time, I hope. And the result was great. So Steve got what he wanted, which is fantastic.
Yeah, amazing.
And you've mentioned
well, but I think
it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, you've mentioned a few times about cooking and food and how that works, and like boiling water 24/7 as well. Just what sort of stuff do you use for cooking food, and do you have a go-to meal or provider or something like that you use when you're up at?
Can I just say here, when Jon came to our expedition event in Snowdonia, I offered him a dehydrated milk, because we had some for customers and for people to try. And he just looked at me like I'd insulted a best friend or something. He's like, no way, no chance.
So eating and hydration are really, really important. And anyone that spent any time with me will know that I kind of over time have decided that I think hydration is almost the top of the tree of the most important things on these big high altitude trips. You spend a lot of time melting snow, but you can actually get pretty efficient at it. It sounds a bit ridiculous to be good at melting snow, but you can get very efficient at it. So the stove's on the second we arrive, even before the tent's up. The stove's just on. And depending on where we go in the world, it depends on what stove we have. In Alaska, it's white gas, or on a big sort of multi-fuel XGK, I think it is, the really loud one that roars. And And then a lot of the time we're on jet boils or MSRs and stuff. But yeah, food wise, as Cathy has just alluded to, I'm unable to, not only unable to eat freeze dried food anymore, I'm unable to be in a tent while someone eats it. I did,
Just turns your stomach. Yeah,
it honestly makes me feel nauseous and want to vomit. So sometimes I have to prepare them for clients or the guys I'm showing tents with, and then I just leave. I just go out for like 20 minutes and put my down suit on and go and admire the stars or something, or go and chat to some other people, because I just can't deal with it. So food ends, but then I feel like I win, because yeah, sure, I have to put a bit more effort in, but I don't mind that, and I end up eating, you know, pasta-y things or couscous or potatoes, or, you know, and often nowadays I'll prepare these at base camp. Or chat to the kitchen guys at the base camp, and they'll rustle me up some fried rice with vegetables and a bit of meat in there, and all I have to do is reheat it, and that works really well for me. But if you can eat freeze-dried meals, then you're winning, because they're so quick and easy and packed full of calories. And I'm led to believe that they actually taste quite nice these days, but I just can't.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I've some of the new ones that Cathy's got in at the shops recently. I had some last summer, and they're absolutely incredible. I couldn't. There was I think a risotto which just absolutely blew my mind. It was so tasty.
I mean, it sounds great. Yeah. It sounds great, but just looking at it makes me feel funny.
I know. Well, I know. I can appreciate and understand that. Yeah, I have a thing with leek and potato soup after working on events, which everyone comes in and they're like, yeah, soup, brilliant, and you're like, oh, I've done this for 12 hours.
I have the same with tequila, but that's another story.
I think we've all got a story with tequila.
We need an after hours version of this. Cathy,
amazing. What comes out of snow, that beautiful pure white snow that you chuck in your pan and you heat, and you get water, and you just think, oh, it's obviously pure, and then you look in your pan and there's not a lot of water in there. There's all sorts of crap in there. There's hair, there's grit.
I know this. It's a never-ending joke that it doesn't matter where you go. Once you've melted the snow and you look in the bottom of the pot, there is always a singular ginger pube in there, and I don't know where it's come from.
How do the gingers get there?
I don't know, but like, you can, even on a first ascent somewhere, you can go and get some fresh snow and come back, and it'll still. I don't know. But, I think,
dear, that's brilliant. My ginger friends listening, they're gonna love this one. Fantastic.
Must be Yeti.
Exactly that. But yeah, right. There's always a bit of grit in there, and a bit of hair, and hair in the throat is horrible. So I think I've never taken one before, but one of my clients on the last trip to Kanchenjunga in the spring had a small, I think it was made by Nalgene. It's just a little plastic thing that kind of pops over the top of your Nalgene bottle, and with a little kind of filter, and you just pour through that. And it's really simple and super lightweight, and that might be the answer to preventing the hair and grit kind of
getting in. Brilliant. We're rapidly running out of time now, and Cathy's favourite question is about toileting.
I knew you were going to do this, Wayne.
I had to stitch you up. It is one that we like to get out of the way, though. Is how do you go at the loo at altitude? I guess you mentioned earlier you've got 2-piece down suits and 1-piece down suits. Do you prefer a 2-piece down suit because it allows you to go for a tinkle and so on, or is it how does toileting work?
Well, with the down suit thing, I sort of started off in 1-pieces and just loved it. It's like being a big kid. You just get into this huge, cozy, warm baby grow, zip yourself in, and you feel like you can take on the world, like Michelin Man, and I absolutely love it. You do feel it does feel good, but then I worked with a brand to create a new down suit. I mean, they made a 2-piece because it's more commercial and marketable, and actually it works great. It works really, really well on the mountain because it's easier to pack because you can separate them. You can just wear the jacket if you want. You know, it's a lot more versatile. So if I was advising someone, I'd probably say to get a 2-piece because it's more versatile. But I do have a love for a 1-piece too. But regarding going to the toilet, I mean, I have to throw my hands in the air and say it's definitely easier being a man. I can't skirt around that, and I do empathize. So for me, I just turn my back and zip open the crotch and go for a wee. It's no more difficult than that. And yeah, if you need a number 2, then yeah, it's either most down suits, well, all down suit trousers will either have a zip that runs straight under the middle and back up towards sort of the lower of your back, or a rainbow zip that comes sort of across your bottom, if you like. And either of those works, but it just comes back to what we said near the beginning about knowing your kit and practicing with it. If you just go to shop and get an 8,000 meter suit, and then you're probably not going to put it on till you're at 7,000 meters, and then that's the first time you need to go and use it, you're probably going to end up making a mess.
Is it?
Yeah.
I remember when I got my first down suit, I was about 23 or something. I walked around the house for weeks, and just watching films on the sofa. And by the time I went to the mountain, I knew where every pocket and every zip and everything was, and I'd extended all the zips with slightly longer toggles made of just like 3mm, 2mm paracord, so they were easy to use with big gloves on and that sort of thing. But in the tent, if the weather's howling and at night, I just use a pee bottle. That's pretty standard. And I know for some women have found that using she peas have been revolutionary for them, and some women have found that they're really difficult and that they don't really work for them.
Don't work.
For those bits of kit, I just encourage them to practice and try, in the shower or whatever at home, and see if it works for them. And if not, unfortunately, it means sort of sticking your boots on and maybe just nipping out the tent. And like we talked about, these tents being really important. And one thing that I do is every time I arrive at a camp is I dig down in the porch. So we call this a vestibule. I'll dig down like 2 foot in the porch, and this creates a huge space, which means you can almost stand up in the porch, and this makes cooking much easier, getting in and out the tent much easier. Apparently, in theory, it works as a bit of a cold sump, so like the cold air drifts out of the tent and
sinks into that. Yeah,
that sounds like a bit of a myth, really. But it's incredible how much easier it makes your life, including should you need to going to the toilet, either number 1 or number 2. In the porch has been done many times, and it's a bit of a lifesaver if it's absolutely howling outside. It can be tricky. But I would always, if you're pushing out for a big summit day, I would always try and get all these sorts of things, melting all the water, eating all your food, going for your number 2s, trying to get these all done whilst maybe the sun is still up, while it's still a little bit warmer, and not once you've got your harness on and your crampons and your oxygen cylinder.
Pitch black and it's howling and all that.
Yeah.
And we're into the last minute now, John. So quickly, is there one single piece of kit that you think is critical to success?
A good question. One single pit is critical to success. That would mean we could do a podcast on what success at 8,000. Indeed. What is success at 8,000 meters?
Getting back down safely, I think, probably.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, do nothing fail.
Success, as I said, was finishing the trip looking like you haven't been on one, and coming back with all your fingers and toes and having a really good time. But I would say, if I'll go a bit left field with this. I'd say that having a positive mental attitude and an aptitude for adventure would be the single best piece of kit that you could take with you on a big expedition. But if you want an actual piece of kit, okay, again, I'm not sure. I'd have to say a pillow, because I genuinely think, whilst it does fall into the category of luxury, which is fine. I mean, you're allowed a few luxuries on these trips. Sleep is really, really important for recovery and rest and how you feel. So, and that alongside with, and Cathy's going to laugh at this, a long-handled titanium spoon.
A spoon as opposed to a spoon.
As opposed to a spork, right?
No, a long-handled titanium spoon as opposed to any other utensil that you could think of. It's the only one you need, full stop.
Yeah. I can see that. I have been a big spork fan, but especially coming back to dehydrated foods, it's quite hard to get a normal length of a utensil in there. Yeah. Yeah.
We could do a podcast on how bad sporks are for 8,000 meter trips. They're not bad pieces of kit, but specifically for high altitude and cold environment big trips. But yeah, that's just
that's
a funny
an entire
little
sport
bugbear
podcast.
of mine. Yeah.
Maybe we need to follow up when you get back from this Kilimanjaro trip. Then I think is we need a follow on podcasts on that basis, because there's a number of things that you said. Oh, we could do a podcast on X, and so we've got a big long list of them now. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Jon. It's absolutely fantastic. Your insight's amazing, and I just love your attitude towards everything as well. It's superb.
Thanks
so
thank
you.
Yeah, thanks, Cathy.
Oh, thanks, Jon. You can find out more about the fantastic expedition range from RAB on the RAB clothing website, or at www.climbers-shop.com. You can also find out more about the expeditions and personal rock climbing guiding in North Wales that Jon offers as part of his company Mountain Expeditions. And we have a whole host of expedition additional information on our Joe Brown Outdoor Academy website, which is www.joebrownoutdooracademy.com.